Manga and graphic novels have been rising in popularity these past couple of years. And sometimes it can be hard to find what's a good one to read, let alone what's good or age appropriate for kids. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 4 manga and 2 graphic novels that I recommend for kids and ones they'll want to read over and over again. And I'd like to emphasize before we begin is with any of these titles or other titles that you might pick up for your children is read the first volume for yourself. This way that you can be the judge whether or not is this something I want my children to read? Is this something I'm okay with them reading? And also allows you to be, a little more involved in their interests. And if it's not something that you want them to read, that opens up the door to have a conversation with them. I think about in The Office, Andy, there's a scene where he talks about wanting to be a food critic. He's like, maybe I could say, this fish tastes bad. And what I don't want to do is be a critic to my kids and just a bad critic and say, this book is bad. You're just not going to read it. Or we're not reading this without being able to share the why. After reading a book, if it's something that, for our age, we're not going to read this at this time, sit down with them, have that conversation, share, hey, why we're not reading this right now. And this also gives you an opportunity of saying, hey, these are the type of books we do read. These are our values. And if anything, it allows you to reinforce your family values. At least for my kids, my primary goal is, I know they're going to the school library by themselves and they're picking out books, and I'd love to think that a filter they're running through as they're looking through books is this something that my parents would be okay with me reading? What we don't want to do is have to be that parent that's always hovering them and letting them know yes or no, but we want to help give them the opportunity to make those decisions on their own. And the best way we can help guide that is being able to share the why, to reinforce our values. And hey, these are the type of, I love that you're reading. I'm excited that you want to read books and you're trying to discover new books. Let me help you with that journey, and let me help you show what are some great ones that you can read. So without further ado, the first manga I'm actually going to recommend is a book called Yotsuba. Now, Yotsuba is about a girl who, with her dad, moves to a new city. And she is a very optimistic girl. The author does a great job through the story, just looking through the lens of a child. Something whimsical is in the beginning, she's walking through this new neighborhood and she discovers that a doorbell is magical. And the reason why it's magical is each time she pushes the button on a doorbell, all of a sudden people come out. So she thinks it's a people machine, and it's just funny. She's a girl that's so optimistic that I think one thing sometimes we can forget is finding joy in the ordinary things of life. Throughout the story, you just can't help but smile at her facial expressions. You can't help but laugh at just how she sees the world through whether that's doing laundry, going to a department store shopping, or when it's a rainy day outside. So it's just a very fun, wholesome series. And I was surprised how much I actually liked it myself. And I'd like to actually continue reading the other volumes. Now there are 15 volumes currently in the series. And the nice thing is you can, each story is pretty much self-contained, so you don't have to necessarily read them in order, but it will, if you read them in order, it will give you a little bit more of a backstory, similar to a sitcom. So that's Yotsuba, a great one that my kids read a lot. And the next series I'm going to recommend is actually a manga called The Legend of Zelda. Now, what's great about this is that each volume is self-contained, or each book has a self-contained story that's 1 or 2 volumes. And when I was asking my son, hey, can I borrow your box set so I can talk about it in this video? He said, Dad, you got to tell them how cool this series is. And I almost want to leave it at that. It doesn't get much better for a boy than just a kid with a sword going on adventures. There's tons of actions, tons of exploring, friendship, and each story actually takes a bit from different video games from The Legend of Zelda. And some of my favorite that actually they put stories in here is like the Super Nintendo classic A Link to the Past, or the N64 masterpiece Ocarina of Time. So they actually took part of that game and then made it into a self-contained story, which is another great way for your kids to read. If your kids are into Zelda, here's a way that you can get them to read more is seeing these stories in the manga. And the next one I'm actually going to recommend is a graphic novel. And this graphic novel is called Wings of Fire. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's definitely been thoroughly loved and read a lot. And Wings of Fire actually is a story about these 5 dragons that were hidden in birth. And while they're living in this cave, they discover to find out there's a lot more going on in the outside world. And there's actually been a prophecy that these 5 dragons will someday stop a war and bring peace into the land. So in this story, it starts in the very beginning that the queen actually has died. And the queen actually had 3 children that be heirs to the throne. And each child wants to be the new king. And so what happens is that these different dragon factions compete against each other, fighting and battling for the throne. Each faction has chosen a different dragon as heir for this kingdom. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of action in it. It almost reminded me of like a story you're reading about medieval times or something during the Roman Empire. But instead of humans battling out against each other, there's even an arena in the first book. It's dragons battling each other. And probably one of my favorite things about this book is one of the main characters named Clay. Now, Clay is really strong, and he keeps getting pushed that the only way to bring peace is by force. The only way to bring peace is through power. And Clay is just not that kind of a dragon. He wants peace, but he's not willing to do that at the cost of another person's life. He's not willing to do that at the cost of powering over somebody else. So it's a great story as you see Clay find a third way, a different way to help bring peace to the land and stop the war from happening. And the next one I'm actually going to recommend is another manga. And this manga is called Chi's Sweet Home. Now, even though this is a manga, it reads almost more like a pet comic. And now, if you know, a traditional manga actually reads right to left, where Chi's Sweet Home, in this version that we have, actually reads left to right. And Chi is about this this cute kitty that ends up, while at the park, gets lost, and then another family ends up adopting her as their kitten. So kind of like Yotsuba, you get to see through the lens of Chi. You get to see Chi as a kitten discovering the world for the first time, and what might look normal for a human may look totally different for a cat. A great example is in the beginning, the family gets a litter box for Chi, and then Chi just thinks it's a toy, it's fun. And while playing a litter box, the Chi goes, "Oh no, I'm gonna have an accident. I better not do this in my new play box." So Chi jumps out of the play box and runs to the laundry room, and then the family is trying to figure out why Chi's not using the litter box. It's very wholesome. When I asked my kids, "What do you think of Chi?" they said, "I think it's a great book for anyone who loves cats and loves cute things." So it's just a really funny, great story, easy to pick up, easy to read, and the pages are in full color too. The next one I'm actually going to recommend is my second graphic novel, and this is called Amulet. Now, Amulet is a typical story about a family that goes through a loss, and after that loss, they end up having to move years later into an old home in the middle of nowhere because this is just the only way to start a new life. It's too expensive in the city. And actually, the story follows this girl named Emily. And while they're in their old grandfather's home, she discovers this amulet. And this amulet has this ability to give her some strange and unique powers. And I don't know if you can see, but there's also can be kind of scary a little bit with some of the monsters. I asked my kids, one's in 3rd grade and one's in 5th. I'm like, "Is this scary at all?" As after I was reading, they're like, "It's just a little bit," but they thoroughly enjoyed the story. And there's currently 8 volumes, with a ninth coming out this spring. And this is a book that you will want to read in order, from volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, and so forth, as this is a sequential series. It's not one you can just pick up just any volume. If you do that, you'll miss things that were going in the background. Almost remind me of like a young kid's version of a cross of Stranger Things and Ghostbusters, if that makes any sense. Uh, it's one that my kids keep going back to. They love them as the mystery unravels, as Emily's trying to decide what to do with this new power. Um, they're telling me there's tons of times in the book where they're like, who do you trust? Who do you not trust? I guess there's a lot of really good twists. So Amulet's the second graphic novel that I recommend. And the last one I'm going to recommend, which I think I saved the best for last, is called a manga called Pokemon Adventures. Now, Pokemon Adventures is not the same as the story on the television show. And I made the mistake years ago. My son was sick on the couch and he said, can I watch this show called Pokemon? And I wasn't thinking much of it. I said, sure. And what I did not realize is that that would open the door for all my kids to now be sucked into Pokemon, and it's the only television show they want to watch. So I was really excited to find out there's actually a series and books that they could read that was similar. And what's great is that the story in the book is self-contained. It has nothing to do with necessarily the anime. It's its own unique story. And in my mind, as I was reading the story, this is what I wish the anime would be. I was enjoying the series. The volumes I've read, I've been in awe of the adventure. I've been excited to find out what happens next. So this is a series that a kid or an adult could very much enjoy. And who doesn't love the idea of Pokemon? I would love if Pokemon was real. The idea of going out on an adventure, being able to have become a Pokemon trainer. So it's a really fun series. And this is another one that you're going to want to read in sequential order, from volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. But it's a great series. I can't recommend it enough. It's probably the one that my kids have read the most. With that said, I see this as a learning community. If you know a great graphic novel or manga that's good for young readers, would you mind leaving that in the comments below? And if this video has been helpful at all, would you like, comment, and share with a friend? And if you've not done so already, if you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.